Hello and welcome. My name's Ariella Indigo and I'm your host for the Multidimensional Human Experience Global Summit. So the reason this summit has been created is due to the amount of us who are emerging spiritually, often right from birth, and due to our heightened sensitivities, it's now the case that more and more of us are being given reductive mental health labels and prescribed pharmaceuticals without taking into account our multidimensional natures and the spiritual awakening process itself. Through my own experience growing up and what I've seen with many others also, this linear third dimensional approach mostly serves to erode our self-esteem, dampen our natural intuitive abilities, and knock our confidence, which in turn gives rise to destructive behavioural habits like addictions, for example, and volatile emotional reactions, because our realities are not being properly supported and the correct guidance not being made available. And sadly, as we know, some highly sensitive souls are choosing to leave the physical plane or are sadly not able to get up and running with their missions. Again, due to their sensitivities and the lack of solutions available, which take into account our multidimensional natures. So this summit looks to address these issues and raise awareness about multidimensional humans, to give fellow empaths, light workers, sensitives, starseeds, and really anybody who's watching this summit some support so that we can confidently align with our highest potential and make a positive impact in the world during this critical stage on Earth and in humanity's evolution. In today's interview, I'm honoured to be joined by Christof Melchizedek, who I first came across a couple of years back now, when I listened to an interview of his and was blown away by the amount of knowledge and wisdom that came through. So I literally jumped at the chance to interview him for our global summit to share his transmission and energy with you. Christof is an incredibly experienced and talented biogenetic reprogrammer. He accelerates people by raising their vibration, expanding their consciousness, and clearing blockages so that they can achieve their soul purpose and mission. As a blueprinter, his purpose is to change the DNA blueprint of human genetic makeup. So he's like an architect for the soul, helping to create the building blocks of your potential through the reconstruction of the DNA that gives you the actual internal coding, and we're going to be talking a lot more about this, to create the impact and abundance that you deserve. So Christof, thank you so much for being here with us. It's a true pleasure and honour to be able to interview you.
You're most welcome.
And a very warm welcome to the summit.
Thank you.
So I'd like to start off, if I may, just for a few minutes, just invite you, Christof, to share a bit about your background and your story with the viewers. That's always something which is really fascinating for people to hear. So please could you talk us into that and tell us how you stepped into your soul purpose mission?
Absolutely. Well, like many people and many of the listeners and yourself at home who is receiving this transmission, you know, we kind of all start off blindly with one foot in front of the other, trying to make our way in the darkness. And eventually, through trial and error, we come to some sense of what is actually happening. Because, you know, when we come into this world, certainly if you're sensitive, we go, wow, what is this place? I don't know if I really belong here. You know, we grow up in discordant families and, you know, educational institutions that are designed to limit our bandwidth of perception and dull down our senses. And my path was always, you know, following my intuition every step of the way. I was very fortunate in that, and I was fortunate while having some issues at home in terms of, you know, parents arguing and alcohol and all other sorts of things playing out in the family. They always encouraged me to follow my intuition. And I started off when I left home going to college, and many people at home probably went on to higher education. And I was fascinated by high-level performance, especially in sports. And I followed that pathway and got a couple of degrees, one in psychology to understand the mechanisms of the mind of high performance, and one in physical education about the body. And so from there, I just naturally went into becoming, I guess, a template coach, working on people on their physical templates, on their physical vessels, working through health and vitality, personal training, physical therapy, coaching around nutrition. And for the first 10, 15, 20 years of my I guess, career, it was very much working through people, helping them to architect a better physical vessel. And that led me down a series of realizations, I guess, moving from just fitness to more wellness, focusing on more on nutrition, focusing on more on live foods. And then from there, understanding belief and mindset and trying to work out why I would give one person, what I would think was a perfect program and another person pretty much the same program to follow. And why is it that one person would be successful and another person would not be successful? And that, of course, led me to understand belief systems and conditioning, which then led on to the higher levels of that, which is emotions and energy. And it was really through energy and vibration that I began to notice the biggest shifts, not only in my own life, but in my aspirants and clients' lives when I began to work on themselves energetically. So I became obsessed with learning about energy and vibration. And I was fortunate enough to be taught by a number of masters in the world. I went through one line of study for an additional 4 years in my late 30s, where I was learning off a master, Dr. Barbara Brennan, and she wrote a couple of classic energy medicine textbooks, Hands of Light, Light Emerging. And I was fortunate enough to be taught directly by her for 4 years. And when I came out of that as a real foundational piece, I was drawn down the shamanic path, and I began studying and working in a couple of traditions. One tradition known as Witi from Africa, from Gabon, working with a plant medicine called Iboga. And I was fortunate enough to work in a circle working with this medicine, this powerful medicine, for a couple of years, traveling Europe, doing ceremonies and learning directly from the medicine itself how to interact with the energetics of someone's template. And at the same time, I was also commuting to South America, and I was studying with the Shipibo traditions and the Shipibo shamans. And I was learning through the plant intelligences of ayahuasca, and I began exploring the higher dimensions and breaking through this heavier conditioning and exploring the higher realms. And upon breaking through into the higher dimensions, I was fortunate enough to be mentored by a group of non-physical beings known as the Guardians, and they began streaming to me direct, advanced, I guess, insights and knowledge about DNA reprogramming and working on people's biology, physiology, and energetic templates through sound, light, and vibration. So what I uncovered was that whether I was studying from the scientists or the shamans, or even the higher dimensional beings, they were all saying the same thing, just with a different language. And it was that commonality across all traditions, the scientists, the shamans, and the higher realms, that all had that same theme, that energy is the blueprint for everything we create in life. And if anywhere in life we are blocked or we're not achieving the highest reality we want, it is because of the energy blueprint that we're holding. And then what I uncovered is that we're able to go in and change that energy blueprint by focusing direct energy through sound and light and vibration and color and form and focused intent. And we can run this energy into our own system and override some of the information that we've collected along the way that is no longer serving us. So from our conditioning growing up, from information that's held as light and sound fields in our ancestral templates, sometimes going back generations, sometimes other journeys we've had as souls, different incarnations we've had. We've collected discordant information that's still collected around our DNA that is creating the script for the outcome we want in our life that is not of the highest alignment. So I began, through all those experiences, understanding quite at a deep level how to reprogram someone's energy field, DNA template, to get aligned with their soul blueprint, what they're actually born and incarnated here to do, and how they can align themselves to that blueprint and then go about their life, effortlessly, because they're actually completely aligned with their path and the natural gifts that are streaming through, and to create and calibrate the internal programming so that they can achieve that effortlessly in their life. And that's been my journey, I guess, over these last 25 or so years of exploring all of this realm, and especially the last, say, 8 or 10 years, where we got into the woo-woo science, so to speak, and began exploring the quantum world and the quantum universe. Yeah.
Amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, very well explained, and fascinating to hear your journey and the evolution that you have been on. I think that will be the case, certainly the case in my life, and I'm sure the case for many of our viewers, that quite often it's not until, certainly as starseeds and people who are here on missions, which will be all of our viewers, you know, that it's until your later life that your earlier life suddenly starts making more sense, right?
Yeah, I mean, you know, when you're in it and your life hasn't unlocked yet, you know, quite often we can get caught up in blaming our parents or blaming our school or blaming our friends for the shit that we find ourselves in. And it's not until we realize, when we transcend that, when we overcome it, we realize actually it was the very lessons that we needed to fulfill our mission. The coding that we achieve by overcoming some of these challenges is fundamental to propel us forward in the future.
Absolutely, absolutely. That has certainly been, my experience, and I know will be everybody's who's watching this. We can all relate to that. Many questions, and we're gonna get into some of those. One of the questions that I have, just listening to what you were saying and describing about the kind of discordant energy that perhaps we're playing out in this lifetime, due to, you know, something that we've accessed in a previous lifetime, and how we can release it. What do you say to people? Because I often have this question asked of me as well, who say, well, surely if that's what I've chosen for this lifetime, then why shouldn't I just be playing that out? Isn't that part of the karma that I need to play out? What do you say to that, Christof?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. We have to remember the fundamental reason for which we came here in the first place as a consciousness driving our physical vessel. We came here to grow, to evolve. And why we have these challenges laid out in front of us, and sometimes, as in, you know, I call them quantum incarnations because they're actually happening simultaneously. Time isn't linear, like behind us or in front of us. There's all these potentials that are playing out. Well, in these previous incarnations, sometimes we have behaved not in congruence with how this universe works, such as unconditional love, such as cooperation and the law of one. We have previously behaved outside of integrity of those operating parameters, so it creates that karma. And sometimes it comes around in that lifetime, sometimes it comes around in another lifetime. And for those people that say, well, it's just, you know, karma for me to be playing out and I have to suffer in this situation, is, well, if you like suffering, yes, you can play that way. But actually, if you want to transcend it, you can absolutely transcend it by watching and recognizing the patterns that are coming back to you again, recognizing what's going on, and then behaving in the equal opposite action to what caused that in the first place. And that's how you start resolving karma. You start behaving in the opposite way to neutralize it. And what happens in the case of karma is it creates a twisted pattern in a nadi. And a nadi is like a spiritual nerve which goes around our spine, and they send light around the nadis, ideally. And then in the case of karma, we create these little twists, so the energy can't rotate around the karma, and it creates a discordant frequency, which is that karmic pattern that is trapped in the nadis, and that sends the broadcast out from our hologram and sets up attractor fields where the like, equal, and opposite situation will come towards you for you to resolve. And until you recognize the pattern and until you overcome it and start behaving with unconditional love, cooperation, law of one, these other types of higher virtues, can you start to dissolve it. And also you can start to do the energetic clearing work if you know how to do that. And, you know, one of the great things of personal evolution is absolutely learning how to master healing your own bioenergy field. Because if there's one thing you want to learn is how your bioenergy field operates, because that's literally the blueprint for all the outcomes in your life. So if you can learn how to energetically resolve karmic patterns or other various things that are happening in your system, well, it puts you at an incredible advantage for life, because you can start rewriting your blueprint, because you're not your blueprint. Your blueprint's what you've come into, but you can transcend that. We're absolutely designed to transcend it. myself, I've transcended my blueprint a few times and evolved past the genetic template that I grew up in, and many beings have done so. There are millions of beings who are actively working to overcome the karma of their parents or the life situation they grew up in. This is the very purpose for which we came. So if you come into a place of acceptance of what my situation is, you're actually falling into a victim mentality. Oh, it's this karma that's playing out, like there's nothing I can do about it. Well, if you want to stay stuck, that's exactly the attitude to have. But if you want to, remain evolving, that's the attitude not to have. And you want to start actively reprogramming your bioenergy field, your energetics, so you can evolve past the current ceilings that have been self-imposed upon yourself, so you can start, achieving and experiencing life to a more fuller potential.
Very empowering and very progressive and evolved, the teachings and the work that you are bringing through. Do you tend to, I guess you see it from the point of view of the people who are attracted to go on this transformational journey with you? They are ready from a soul perspective to transform, otherwise they wouldn't have come into contact with you, right?
Well, exactly. I mean, sometimes we get people who come and say, "Save me," and we don't. Those people tend to be disappointed because we're not here to save people. We're here to empower people to learn how to do the work themselves. It's not just about turning up and receiving an energy transmission and, hey, presto, you're an avatar. It's about actually understanding how you can keep actively evolving your consciousness, because then you can move from being victim into being a victor. You can understand how the world works and how I can adjust my energy system so that I can be imprinting my intention on existence rather than having existence imprint its intent on me. And therefore, everything changes, because you realize that every single thing showing up in your life is simply a reflection of the information held in your bioenergy field and DNA template. Therefore, if there's a repeated pattern of a certain type of person that is coming back to me time and again, and they are looping around and re-looping around time and again, well, that's something that I have inside my system that needs adjusting, that needs changing, and I can take ownership and responsibility for that, make those changes, and therefore my external reality also changes.
Okay, apologies everybody, we just got cut briefly there. So Christof, could we start back just by asking you to explain to the viewers and to me what is your understanding and experience of what it means to be a multidimensional human?
Okay, great question. Yeah. Well, multidimensional means that we have multiple aspects of our consciousness. And as you understand, there are different wavelengths, which are just simply the speed of which light oscillates, which can be represented in colors. That's how you can access a different wavelength. There are different dimensions that make up our whole universe, and we are operating in a very narrow, wavelength called the third dimension, in which everything becomes physical. And while yes, there is a physical aspect to us, there's also a greater aspect to us that's simultaneously experiencing consciousness outside of a physical vessel. So when you are, asleep, so to speak, and you're literally in the dream, you're kind of like a video game player inside a video game, trying to make your way through life in these different levels, not realizing there's anything else outside of this little video game. Kind of like, Donkey Kong or something like that, where, you're not even realizing there's anything outside of the video game. But then as you go on in your evolution, you recognize and you expand your consciousness, you realize that there's actually a consciousness that's driving the video game character. And so in this case, our physical vessel is like an avatar. It's an avatar for the greater aspect of our consciousness that is driving and experiencing itself here in the third dimension. So it's kind of like then waking up to the fact that you're not only the video game character, but you're also a video game player, the consciousness that is driving and controlling the video game character. And in this metaphor, we expand that to our avatar vessel, which is this physical vessel. Your avatar isn't something like, a lot of people, when they think of avatar, they think of Yeshua, Jesus, Krishna, Buddha as avatars. Well, every single person here on the planet's an avatar, and your physical body's the avatar. It's the avatar for your consciousness that is stationed in these higher realms that's overseeing your life. And one of the things when you wake up is that you're able to start connecting greater and greater degrees to this level of consciousness. And the first stage of that is recognizing yourself, you're having a soul, and you recognize that your consciousness continues to live and to experience and explore through mind and feeling. And then as you expand to greater degrees of awareness and you go up into the higher dimensions, up in dimensions 7, 8, and 9, where your soul then become merged with a group soul, a group field of energy, a group consciousness, and you lose the individuated aspect of the soul and you merge up into the group intelligence, into the group mind, or into the group field or the oversoul. And then from there, there's a greater field of consciousness you can connect to, which is the avatar consciousness field. So what's beautiful about this is that as you start working on yourself and you start deepening your realization, you can be connecting with these greater, vaster consciousness fields and begin programming your life from there, because that's really the templates from which all of creation and your own existence comes from. And you can be setting intentions and driving your life from this vaster field of consciousness so that all this energy streams down into your physical vessel, your avatar, to carry out the blueprints and plans, actions by the vaster state of your consciousness, the vaster part of your intelligence, that group field, that group energy consciousness that is really driving your life and really the one that is seeding many of the intuitions, the ideas that you have. And what happens is that, if you begin ignoring these little seeds that are coming down from this vaster part of yourself, this is the intuition, you ignore the intuition, what happens is that the universe or your higher self sends you a bit of a slap, like a little warning. First up, it's kind of like you get a yellow card where, hey, you're not paying attention to what your soul learning is. And then later on, you get a red card if you don't listen to the yellow card, and you get the big cosmic slap where there's an intervention, there's an accident, or you lose your job, or suddenly a relationship dissolves out of your hands, where you're given that little nudge. And absolutely, it's the experience of our consciousness. Of course, the ego wants to fight against following this path because it doesn't make sense to the linear mind. It is beyond a series of steps and sequences that our ego is trying to work out. Well, if I leave my job, how am I going to get money to pay the bills, and how am I going to do all that? Whereas the soul works by these, quantum leaps. It doesn't necessarily work in that linear fashion. So this is where the wrestling match between the egoic personality of your physical vessel's avatar and the vaster field of consciousness which is driving your life come into this little conflict. And our life is about resolving that internal conflict so that we can overcome the egoic deficiencies which have happened when we've been growing up, and we can more easily follow the soul needs. And this is the great, conundrum that we all face in our evolution, is to overcome these egoic deficiencies or feelings of safety or survival or inadequacy or self-esteem or lack or limitation or unworthiness or any number of these types of things we have to overcome to follow our soul calling. And the vaster field of our consciousness sends these little nuggets of information down, these little breadcrumbs to follow. And if we're brave enough and we can feel comfortable in uncertainty, we can follow those steps and, life magically unlocks. And that's the great contrast, where the closer you follow your soul calling, the nuggets that are coming down from the vaster part of yourself, the easier, more flowing, more abundant life becomes. The further away you walk from your life path, your destiny path, as I like to call it, the more bumpy and conflicting and difficult life becomes until you wake up and finally get it. So I hope that answers that multi-dimensional question for people nicely.
That was a great answer. Thank you so much. So clear. And that explains a huge amount. I love the way you have a real gift of putting a lot of information into a very clear format and helping us to understand things intellectually as well as at a heart level, which, you know, we need to do as human beings, right? We need to have that intellectual understanding often as well, so that the heart can open.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate that. Thank you. So Christof, you know, we've got a lot of sensitives who are tuning in to watch this summit, and a lot of people who perhaps struggle to push through these blocks and to get up and running with their missions. What would you say to people? What are your strategies and your advice on how to transmute these sensitivities and challenges into their greatest gifts?
Well, the first thing, if you're energetically sensitive, is to realize this is a great gift. It's absolutely not a curse. You know, it's putting you at an incredible advantage over people, you know, who are not energetically sensitive in the same degree. Yes, it can be more challenging, but from those challenges rise the opportunities to be able to navigate, you know, this energy matrix that we live in with much more precision, clarity, certainty, once you understand how to drive your hologram and how to work with it. You know, and the best investment you can make is learning more deeply about your bioenergy field and how to interface these different fields of energy. Because if you can learn how to interface these different fields, you're able to set up the templates and the intentions and the directions to flow into it more easily. And your energetic sensitivity is your ability to discern, you know, what is happening, what's coming at you, and the ability to follow your intuition. Now, in saying that, of course, for many people, it can be somewhat challenging going out into the physical world, into the matrix, where there's a lot of all sorts of things happening. There's aggression, there's, you know, lots of beings in the astral plane which can be playing a little bit of a havoc with you. There can be entities and attachments and all sorts of, you know, cords and daggers and all sorts of energetic debris that can be clustered around people. Now, if you're aware of these things and you're understanding how to navigate them, you can easily deal with them through understanding energy dynamics. Now, a very simple tip I can give for people at home listening to this in a moment is understanding your energetic boundaries. That is the first piece to it. One of the things where people who are energetically sensitive is that quite often they don't have a good understanding of boundaries. First up, they are very sensitive in the heart. So what this means is that if they're afraid if they say no to somebody, that it's going to hurt their feelings. So rather than hurting their feelings, they allow themselves in their energy field to be manipulated by other people's intentions and desires, and they get utilized as a pawn in other people's agendas. Whereas that is non-serving and ends up creating you to be a victim of other people's urgencies and emergencies. So it's very important that you understand boundaries, and that's the most important thing, is understanding your energetically boundary, what feels good and safe for you, and knowing that it's totally okay to say no if it doesn't serve you and your intent. And everything comes around about being sovereign. So for energetically sensitive people, quite often there's underlying programming that is creating these repeating situations around people pleasing. They don't want to let other people down. They don't want to hurt other people. And so they end up allowing themselves to be used for other people's, you know, agendas, as I mentioned. Now, the first thing to be aware of is, you know, becoming aware of your energy field in the same way that you're aware of your physical body. And when you have that knowledge and understanding that your energy field is very much a part of your consciousness and makeup in the same way your physical vessel is, then you can start to navigate with this energetic precision that is going on, because you can feel when something's coming towards you before it actually hits you, because you're energetically aware of what's going on. Now, one of the simplest methods that we can share with you is just imagining the edge of your field with a solid ball of golden light around the edges of your field. So if you were to put out your hands kind of a bit like that, that would kind of be, you know, the level of your personal energy field. You know, you have a greater energy field past and beyond that. I'm just talking right now about the first 7 levels of the human energy field that have the same frequency band as the 7 chakras, the 7 energy centers. And if you start your day by coming into hara, by coming into being centered, and just creating that golden edge around, and just even imagining that this could be coated with Teflon, so that any energy coming in can just bounce off. And that's a very nice, easy way to set up your day. And also, as part of a gift, I believe that we're giving people who are interested, is that we've designed a specific code that can do this work at a much deeper level, where the Guardian Code of Absolute Source is a geometric form that you can kind of set up, and you can kind of utilize and run in your field, so that you're able to basically have that frequency set up in your field as you start the day. So that's just a little example of that code there. And these frequencies and geometries has the information to create coherence and prevents things from coming in your field. Now, this is one tool of many tools that you could use to ensure that your sensitivity isn't compromised as you're navigating your day.
Amazing. Goodness me, don't they need to teach this at school?
Well, exactly. This is what we need to teach the new children that are coming, who are growing up. And, absolutely, as my life extends and goes on, I would absolutely be, very interested in teaching this to children. At the moment we're teaching it to adults, and we're getting this information out through certifications and programs to allow people to come into energetic mastery. But children, they love this stuff because it requires imagination, it requires, senses and high sense perception, and it's very natural to them. My son Noah, who's 2 years old, if he has a little fall over, he'll ask, "Daddy, can you do some magic on me? And can you pull this energy off me?" And, he'll do it himself. He'll get up and go, "Shh, shh," like this, to energetically clear him. So if they know no different, they are very fast learners.
Yeah. Exciting times, incredible shifts happening. You're obviously on an incredible mission yourself to help people with this, and it's just that I can so feel into how important this work is and how much we need it on Earth at the moment.
Well, it's absolutely empowering, and this is exactly the things that they won't teach you at school. And these are the most critical things to learn, because if you can master your bioenergy field, every single piece of your life begins changing, because literally it's just a program that is playing out. So, to really understand how this works, if you consider, yourself to be like a movie projector, and the movie projector is sending light out onto the screen, what comes up on the screen is your external reality. Well, inside the movie projector, there are a few things that are going on to create that image. And usually if people don't like the image of what they're seeing in their reality, they don't like the movie that's playing out in their life, they try to blame the movie. They blame the external circumstances that are going on. Well, all those projections onto the video screen isn't going to change the outcome. You have to go into the movie projector itself. Now, the film inside the movie projector is like your DNA. And your DNA is comprised of 3.1 billion letters of A, C, T, and G rearranged in different sequences to create the programming language of your code. Just like, your computer has a code behind the scenes that creates the images on the screen, well, your reality is created by the code of your DNA. And the light that shines onto that code is like your consciousness. So the bigger the consciousness, the brighter the imagery, the more sharper the images that you get. And you can go and start changing the DNA sequences by running energy in towards them, because your DNA is coded to the sound of your own voice, it's coded to the specific wavelengths of light, and it's coded to specific sound tones. And all we've done is we've taken the principles of quantum mechanics, quantum physics, and wave genetics, epigenetics, and understood all those divine sciences and packaged them in a way that the end user can utilize in a simple way, much as people behind the scenes can use WordPress. And when you know that you can change your DNA code, you can create a different projection of your reality, it gets very exciting, because suddenly you get a big yield for your effort. Because, everyone's after things that work quickly and with big impact. And if you're working a lot in the physical, well, as soon as you start working in the higher dimensions, it takes a much less effort to create a bigger impact. And this is why it is exciting right now, because finally we're starting to get a deeper understanding of how actually our universal consciousness, our biology, our physiology, our light body, our DNA, all are interacting with each other to create our reality. And we've got the technology now to go into our code, change our program to change a new reality and create a new movie. So not only do you get to become the movie actor in your own reality, you get to become the script writer and the movie director when you start to take personal responsibility for your life and start learning how to change your DNA and start to drive your bioenergy field.
Amazing, amazing. So presumably you guys, can you help people to understand their programs, the DNA programs that they're creating?
Absolutely. And, this is what the whole work is about. You see, when things come up for you, here's how we teach how it all works, to take personal responsibility. When you're centered, you're in neutrality. You're neither for nor against something. You're underlying, hopefully, these feelings of unconditional love that is playing out in your system. If someone says something innocuous to you, that suddenly triggers you in some way, or someone does something and you have an emotional upset, you have a reaction. That is a sign that there's a program playing out from your past that is being affected by the same energy that is happening today. So all that's happened is that there's been a wounding from your past that has been protected by the ego, lower self, wall, mask, all these defenses. Then when a similar vibration, granted, delivered by a different person or a different situation comes up, that triggers these internal reactions happening in your system. And suddenly you start venting on the inside of frustration or disappointment or anger or these other things that are playing up in your system. You have this emotional upset. That is your pathway of doing some work on yourself. There, you go in to all these emotional upsets, you try to you reverse engineer back to what caused it in the first place, and then what you do is you can run a specific energy frequency through a code and a command. That's one way of doing it that we've designed at the Institute of Divine Potential, whereby you rewrite that program and rewrite that wounding. You release the wound, you overwrite the program so that when the person comes around again and says a similar thing, you don't react. And when you don't react, you've passed the test. And so what life is about is embracing the shadows that come up of resistance, of frustration, of anxiety, of anger, of frustration, any of these types of things, and working through them and working out what is underneath that is making me react like that. There's a program, an imprinted program, that is creating me to react. And when you own your reactions and you can reverse engineer back and overwrite the program, suddenly you stop attracting that situation anymore, because you're attracting the situation. Why do all these people take advantage of me? And this is particularly true for energetically sensitive people, where people are constantly coming around and perhaps taking advantage of them. It's because there's a program playing out in your system that no doubt you've inherited from your parents or from your ancestors or the family unit that you grew up in. And as a consequence, your DNA is broadcasting a frequency which is creating attractive fields for you to experience that discordance and upset. You go into emotional reaction, and typically what happens is people go into blame and blame others and end up in hysteria. Whereas what we teach is we want you to take personal responsibility for your emotional upsets and override them. And then this way you can thank the person for being a teacher of something that was inside of you, and you can become empowered. And that's really the beautiful pathway of, steady transformation, knowing that having the tools to overcome and owning your own emotional discordances and upsets.
Awesome. So it's important, do you teach, Christof, that it's important for people to first become conscious of what it is that they need to transform in order so that it can be transformed?
Absolutely. And sometimes you're not aware of it because they're in the shadows. And this is why your partner is often your best friend in this time, which at the time seems like your worst enemy, because you're playing a bit of tennis back and forward because
the partner, your boyfriend, your girlfriend, or this person you live with, your sister, your brother, as a mirror to you. And they reflect back to you exactly what's going on. And so remember that, we've chosen this person as our own reflection. And we get to utilize and we get to experience ourselves through the eyes of them. And they reflect to us often things that we don't like. So while it can be tough, ultimately our relationships form the greatest opportunity for growth because they see things that we do not see.
Yes, absolutely. 100%. I think we've all had experience of that.
Oh, it's ongoing, and it never ends. There's greater and greater levels and degrees of it. And what's the most beautiful thing is that when you're in a conscious relationship whereby both parties are playing that game, they are mirroring back to each other with unconditional love, and you can help each other grow much, much faster than you would ever do on your own.
Absolutely. It's an incredible vehicle of transformation, isn't it? And to put you on that fast track when you're conscious about what's going on. Cool. Okay. So, hey, listen, I definitely want to go more into your free gift because it is absolutely phenomenal, and I want us to share that with all the viewers. But quick, Christof, and I think I probably know the answer to this, but for our viewers, what advice can you give them on how they can align and connect with their missions? How can they become more conscious about their purpose here on earth?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first up, your purpose, isn't located here. You can't think this one down. You have to be empty. You have to be empty enough to receive it from the greater aspect of your consciousness. And it's going to reside here in your high heart. This is where your purpose will reside, where the longing you get. There'll be a longing that you have. There'll be some sort of injustice or something that you know that you're here to support or go along with. And very often it is in the lens of the past. Some experiences you've had, some trauma that you've had, something you've had to overcome and transcend yourself. And so and it will come in a way that is utilizing the divine gifts, things that you're naturally good at, that you never ever thought you could make money out of, is the very direction often that, is going to be the path for you because it's effortless. It's like you don't even have to prepare. You just turn up and magic happens when you're doing this activity and this thing. And usually it'll be in the service of other people based upon something you've had to overcome yourself because you carry a code, which is the energetic override for people for transcending this issue. And it could be a number of things. And so when you can connect into that and you recognize, that, okay, well, this is what I've overcome, this is what I've got a code for, and I know what my natural gifts are, but I never know how to make money from it. Don't worry about any of that. Just start by doing it. Do it for free. And usually you love it so much you do it for free anyway, and then very unexpectedly, monetized opportunities begin presenting themselves, and you can start to actually merge these three spheres of your life where your purpose and your passions and your profession all come together. And when that happens and you merged your purpose, profession, and passions all into one aligned, coherent activity, you know that you're on the path of accelerating your life purpose because everything comes to you effortlessly. The templates are already there for you in your consciousness, in your spiritual form, and you're just bringing them down into the physical. Now, the thing that you need to overcome is these little seedlings of self-doubt that we've been programmed into society. Oh, you must have a normal job. You must behave in this way to fit into society. Well, let's be honest with each other now. Society is completely broken. The way that we've set up the world right now is not working. And what is needed for the new world, for the new earth, to formulate is people who have the courage to chase and fulfill their dreams. And this is where your courage comes in. This is where you need to have faith and belief and knowing that even though you can't see yet what is materializing in your high heart, what you know you need to be doing, you need to keep making these steps in that direction, knowing that although you can't see it right now, it will materialize. And that is the reward for that faith. When you make those steps in blindness, knowing that something is going to come as long as I keep making movement and I keep moving forward. And as long as you keep doing that, things will start shifting. And the beautiful thing is because the frequency is so fast coming into our planet right now, we have these enormous auroric consciousness fields where the wavelengths are so fast coming in, we can energetically make some shifts inside of ourselves by utilizing this energy, and it can override our system very quickly. I mean, what used to take 10 years, I've literally seen, take one these days, and this is a classic example of the speed at which people can go now because of the blueprint busting that has happened from some of the people who have worked through these issues. The codes are there and the frequency there is there. And it's literally like you're moving from rowing your boat across the ocean from personal effort and personal will to sailing your boat, utilizing the energy from source that is now streaming into our planet. And you just need to learn some basic sailing skills. We call it energetic sailing, so that you know how to trim that sail, you know how to steer left, you know how to steer right, so you can come into that sweet spot where your purpose, passions, and profession all align, and you can live that life you've always imagined.
Amazing. Great advice. And I know that the work that you're doing with people, it helps them to more quickly align with their missions, of course, because you're helping people to transform all of those shadow programs. And on that note, and I know you flashed it up on the screen already, but I didn't know, Christof, whether you wanted to go deeper into this incredible free gift that you're offering for all of the viewers of this summit. And I really encourage everybody to access this free gift because it's extremely transformational. Could you talk us through it, please, Christof?
Yeah, that code I just had up on the screen is called the Guardian Code of Absolute Source. And Akasha, who I co-founded the Institute with, he goes up into these higher realms with an intention. And we have to remember that our physical reality is created through the basic programming language of this universe. The programming language isn't like zeros and ones as it is in computers. It's sound, which creates vibration, which creates light. And when we combine these things, this light creates wavelengths and color, which goes on to create form and geometry. And these things, geometry, form, color, light, sound, are the form-holding templates which create the physical reality. So when we begin working with these templates, we can bring them energetically into our system, and that information is brought into our field, and it sets up our field in that day. So the example of this particular code here, the Guardian Code of Absolute Source, is basically holding information in field with the colors and the geometry that you can bring into your field, and it will immediately increase coherence in your field and prevent any external intrusions and other various things coming in. So you can utilize this when you leave your house or you're about to go into a party or about to go into work, and suddenly your field goes bling, and it allows your field to be much easier, to be more stable, less penetrable from outside influences. And it creates a nice coherent field of energy. And this is the one we love to gift you, because we know that if you're energetically sensitive, as such as the title of this conference, this is going to stand you in such amazing stead. And it's going to come with an in-depth manual on how to use it. And you can print it out and place it on your bedroom, or you can place it in various places. And you can interact with it by bringing it into your consciousness and imagining yourself sitting inside that field, and it's going to have an immediate impact. And once you learn how to utilize that code, we'll send you some more information about how you can get started on mastering your bioenergy field step by step, so that you can actually begin reprogramming your biofield and get aligned to the life you've always wanted to live.
Wow. We are so lucky in this summit to be connecting with these free gifts. And I know they are going to help many, many people who are watching this. So please go and grab this free list. Click on the link that I'm giving to you in today's email. Go and grab that. This is an incredible opportunity to transform and to take back our sovereign right and responsibility for our energy field. So, don't miss out on this opportunity. Please go and grab that.
Yeah, and we just like to support you in learning more about your bioenergy field and your DNA, and give you the power to make real change in your life through understanding how this works. And so it could be a beautiful journey to go on and start with that guardian code of absolute source, and we'll go from there.
Amazing. Christof, thank you so much. This has been a truly profound interview. So much wisdom, information, knowledge, so much heart sharing and tools of transformation that you've given to our viewers. I feel absolutely blessed and honoured to do this interview. Thank you.
Yeah, you're most welcome, Marianne. Thank you for your beautiful work you're doing, getting this important information out to people who really need it. It's been a great pleasure to be with you here today, and for all those of you watching at home, namaste, and I hope to see you again soon.
Awesome. Thank you so much to everybody who's watched today's interview. I'm sure you agree, a high frequency and transformational interview. Please reach out, let us know what you thought to today's interview, what has been your favourite part. And as I say, please go and grab this free gift. That's an incredible opportunity that we're all being offered. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And I will see you tomorrow for another amazing interview. Bye for now.
Namaste.